16 years I spent as a single mother, fighting to give my daughter Julia the best of everything. And it was on her wedding day that I heard her future husband tell his friends, marrying that filthy pig of a daughter is the price I pay to get my hands on her fortune. In that moment, something inside of me broke. I decided he would never see a single cent of what I had built, even if it meant destroying my only daughter's dream of a perfect wedding. The clock read 13 minutes past 10 in the morning when I finished adjusting my mother-of-the-bride dress. My daughter Julia was getting married in less than 5 hours, and everything had to be perfect. 16 years as a single mother taught me to pay attention to the details, and this day would be no different. I had saved every penny to give my only daughter the wedding of her dreams. The hotel where the ceremony was to take place was luxurious, but modest by the standards of Leonard, the groom. He came from a wealthy family, though they had recently faced financial troubles. I never mentioned it to Julia, but I noticed how his interest in her grew after our small pastry business started to take off. In the last 3 years, we went from a makeshift kitchen to being one of the largest distributors of fine desserts in the Austin area. "Mom, can you get my bouquet from the groom's preparation room?" Julia asked while the makeup artist was finishing her work. "I forgot it there when I went to drop off his gift." I nodded with a smile. My daughter was radiant, her eyes shining with anticipation. She had always dreamed of a fairy tale, and I wanted to believe she had found her prince. I walked down the hotel corridor, trying not to wrinkle my dress. The hall was already being decorated with the white and gold flower arrangements I had chosen myself. I approached the room where Leonard and his groomsmen were getting ready. The door was ajar, and I could hear men's laughter. I was about to knock when I heard Leonard's voice, clear and mocking. "Just a few more hours, guys. Then I sign those partnership papers, get my hands on her bakery, and that's it. Marrying that filthy pig of a daughter is a small price to pay to get back what my father lost in his business deals." I froze. My legs felt weak, and my heart seemed to stop. I instinctively moved away from the door, leaning against the wall so I wouldn't fall. "But you're going to have to sleep with her, man," said a voice I recognized as his best friend, Bruno's. "Nothing a bottle of whiskey can't solve," Leonard answered, laughing. "She's so pathetic. She believes me when I tell her I love her. And her mum? That idiot old woman working day and night at that bakery? She has no idea that in 6 months we're selling everything, and she'll be right back in the neighborhood she never should have left." The laughter grew louder. I felt the blood boil in my veins. My breathing became difficult. My vision went dark for a moment, and I had to control myself to keep from storming into that room and ending that cretin's dental career by tearing his teeth out one by one. "And when she starts crying over every little thing, she looks like a beached whale," Leonard continued mercilessly. I couldn't take any more. With trembling hands and a shattered heart, I walked away in silence. Julia, my girl, my pride, was about to marry a monster who saw her only as a means to an end. I returned to the room where she was getting ready, without the bouquet. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just heard. How would I tell Julia? Would she believe me? Or would she think I was trying to sabotage her wedding? "Mom, are you okay? Where's the bouquet?" Julia asked, noticing my expression. "It was locked. I'm going to ask for the key," I lied, trying to buy some time. I went out again, closed the door, and rested my forehead against the cool wood. Silent tears streamed down my face. I had to make a decision, and fast. I took out my cell phone and called Anthony, my accountant and friend for years. He was the only person I trusted completely with financial matters. "Anthony, I need you to come to the Palm Grand Hotel immediately and bring those contingency documents we prepared last year. Yes, the emergency ones. No, I can't explain right now. It's urgent." He agreed without asking questions. That was the nature of our friendship. After that, I called my lawyer. If Leonard thought he was going to get his hands on what I built with my sweat and tears, he was sorely mistaken. I had little time, but I was determined. I took a deep breath, wiped away my tears, and went back to Julia's room, this time with a firm resolution in my heart. As a mother, I had two equally painful options: destroy my daughter's wedding dream by revealing the truth, or let her fall into the trap of a man who only wanted to use her. I watched her in the mirror as the stylist finished her hair. Julia was smiling, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. Her lace dress was simple and elegant, exactly as she had always wanted. She had saved for years for this day, working endless nights at the bakery. "You look beautiful," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Mum, don't start crying yet. You'll ruin your makeup," she joked, not knowing the real reason for my tears. What she didn't know was that, in the coming hours, I would take drastic measures that would change our lives forever. The determined woman who had built a business from scratch was about to show her claws. Anthony arrived in record time, carrying a black briefcase under his arm. We met in the hotel lobby, in a discreet corner near the emergency stairs. "Regina, what happened?" he asked, worried. I told him everything I had heard, every filthy word that came out of Leonard's mouth. Anthony turned pale. Then I saw the rage build in his eyes. "That miserable bastard," he muttered. "What are we going to do?" "We're implementing the contingency plan now. Not later, not tomorrow. Now." The contingency plan was something we had prepared when we started to expand the business. It was a way to protect the company in case something happened to me. I never imagined we would use it to stop a con artist's son-in-law from taking control of everything. "Regina, are you sure? This will completely prevent Leonard from having any access to the company's assets, but it also means that Julia won't be able to touch the money until the terms we establish are met," I finished. "Yes, I'm sure. It's the only way to protect her." Anthony opened the briefcase, and we started reviewing the documents. We called the notary and the bank, using our connections to speed up procedures that would normally take weeks. In 2 hours, the bakery, Julia's Delights, no longer belonged to me, but to a holding company that I controlled. Any significant financial decision would require my signature, and that of at least 2 of the trustees I appointed, Anthony and my sister Marissa. Julia would still be a beneficiary. She would receive her monthly allowance, but she couldn't sell, transfer, or use the company as collateral for loans. Most importantly, her future husband would have no rights to the business, regardless of the property regime they chose. While Anthony finalized the procedures online, I went back to see Julia. She was having lunch with her bridesmaids, laughing and sharing childhood stories. My heart sank. Would this be her last moment of genuine happiness? I hesitated at the door, watching her. It was my duty to protect her, even if it meant hurting her. But how could I tell her the truth without destroying her special day? How could I prove what I had heard? "Mrs. Regina." The voice of Carla, the wedding planner, brought me back to reality. "Is everything okay? The musicians need to know when to start." "Yes, I'm on my way," I replied automatically. When I returned to the lobby, Anthony handed me a folder with documents. "It's done," he said. I signed as a witness. Marissa sent the digital power of attorney. The transfer of assets is complete. Leonard can't touch a thing, even if he marries Julia. I sighed, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But another, much heavier one, took its place. I had protected our legacy, but what about my daughter's heart? "Regina," Anthony gripped my hands. "You have to tell her, before the ceremony." "I know," I whispered. But what if she doesn't believe me? What if she chooses to stay with him anyway? Then she'll do it knowing the truth. She's an adult. She needs to make her own decisions. Just then, I saw Leonard entering the lobby with his groomsmen. They were laughing, adjusting their ties, completely unaware of my presence. The rage returned with full force. I'm going to tell her now, I decided. When I entered the room, Julia was alone, already dressed and ready. She looked like a princess in her white dress, the delicate veil framing her face. She smiled when she saw me, but her smile vanished when she saw my expression. "Mom, what's wrong? Did something happen?" I sat down next to her, holding her hands. "Julia, my love, I need to tell you something very difficult." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Today, when I went to get your bouquet, I heard Leonard talking to his groomsmen." I told her everything, every cruel word, every mocking laugh. As I spoke, I watched her face transform. First, disbelief, then confusion, and finally a pain so deep I thought my heart would break along with hers. "No," she shook her head, pulling her hands away. "He wouldn't do that. You must have misheard." "Honey, I know it's hard to believe, but—" "No, Mom." Her voice rose. "You never liked him. You always thought he was with me for my money." "Julia, I heard it with my own ears," I insisted, keeping my voice calm. "He called you horrible things. He said marrying you was a small price to pay to get his hands on the bakery." Tears started streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Why are you doing this? Today of all days?" She stood up, moving away from me. "Because I love you, honey, and I'd rather have you hate me now than find out the truth when it's too late." She turned to the mirror, trying to hold back her sobs. "I want to talk to him," she decided, grabbing her cell phone. "I'm going to ask him directly. Julia, he's going to deny it." "It's my wedding," she yelled, which was rare for her. My daughter had always been sweet and composed. "My life. I decide what to do." She was right. It was her life, her choice. I had done my part by protecting our assets and telling her the truth. The rest was in her hands. "Okay," I conceded. "Talk to him. But before you do, I want you to know something." I handed her a copy of the documents I had signed with Anthony. "What is this?" "I transferred the bakery to a holding company. You'll still get your allowance, but neither you nor Leonard will be able to sell or use the company as collateral. It's a protective measure I took today, after what I heard." Julia glanced at the papers, her expression shifting from shock to outrage. "You did this without asking me? How could you?" "It was necessary. If I'm wrong, it won't make a difference. But if I'm right—" I let the sentence hang in the air. She stared at me for a long moment, silent tears running down her face. Then she picked up her phone and called Leonard. "Leo, I need to talk to you. Now. It's urgent." Her voice trembled. "Come to my room." After hanging up, she turned to me. "I want you to stay, Mum. I want you to hear what he has to say." I nodded, and we waited in a tense silence. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Leonard walked in with that charming smile that had so enchanted my daughter. He was wearing an impeccable suit, his hair slicked back, the perfect picture of an eager groom. His smile faltered when he saw me there. "Honey, what's wrong? You should be getting ready for—" He stopped when he noticed the tears on her face. "What happened? Why are you crying?" Julia took a deep breath, drying her tears. "I need to ask you a question, Leo, and I want you to be completely honest." Leonard looked at me, then back at her, visibly uncomfortable. "Of course, my love. Anything." "Are you marrying me for love, or for the bakery's money. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Leonard's face cycle through several emotions in seconds: surprise, confusion, calculation, and finally a mask of indignation. What kind of question is that? He moved toward her, trying to take her hands. Of course I'm marrying you for love. Where did you get an idea like that? Julia pulled away, keeping her distance. My mother heard you in the room with your groomsman. She said you called me a filthy pig, that marrying me was just a small price to pay to get your hands on the bakery. Leonard shot me a furious look, then forced a laugh. And you believed her? Julia, your mother has never liked me. She's making this up to break us apart. I'm not making anything up, I replied, my voice steady. I heard every word you said, Leonard. Prove it, he challenged me, crossing his arms. It's your word against mine. That's when I remembered something. My phone. After hearing the initial conversation, I had gone back into the hall and recorded part of their continued conversation. I had forgotten about it myself, having acted on instinct in that moment of shock. I took out the device and found the recording. There it was. I pressed play. So pathetic. She believes me when I tell her I love her. And her mum, that idiot old woman working day and night at that bakery. She has no idea that in 6 months we're selling everything, and she'll be right back in the neighborhood she never should have left. Leonard's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable, followed by laughter. And when she starts crying over every little thing, she looks like a beached whale. I stopped the recording. Julia's face was pale, her eyes fixed on Leonard, who looked as if he'd seen a ghost. Julia, I can explain, he began, but she held up a hand, cutting him off. Explain what, exactly? How you were planning to use me and then throw me away? How you laughed at me with your friends? It was just stupid jokes. The guys were winding me up. I drank too much. He tried to approach her again, but Julia stepped back. Don't touch me. Her voice was ice. Were you really going to sell the bakery? Everything my mother built? Everything we worked for? Leonard looked at me, then at her, his face transforming. The mask fell away, revealing the coldness I had always suspected lay behind the charm. And what's the problem? That bakery could be worth millions in the right hands. You two are so sentimental, clinging to that place as if it's something special. It is special, Julia shouted, her pain giving way to rage. It's my mother's life. It's my life. Oh, please, Leonard rolled his eyes. You could have so much more. I was going to give you a life you can't even imagine, with my family's money. What's the difference? Money is money. Julia grabbed the documents I had given her and threw them at his chest. Read this. My mother transferred everything to a holding company. You will never touch a cent of our money. Leonard picked up the papers, reading them quickly. I saw his face shift from contempt to understanding, and then to shock. He looked at me, furious. You can't do this. I already did, I replied simply. He crumpled the papers and threw them on the floor. This isn't over. I have friends, lawyers. I'm going to fight this. You can try, I challenged him, but it will be hard to explain to a judge why you deserve access to my family's assets after this recording. His rage turned to calculation. Ever the strategist, Leonard turned back to Julia, softening his expression. Honey, let's talk in private. Your mother is putting things in your head. What you heard, I can explain it. They were stupid jokes. I'm nervous about the wedding. I said dumb things to impress those idiots. Julia looked at him for a long moment. I saw her hands tremble, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. I was afraid she would give in, that love would blind her again. Get out of my room, she finally said, her voice low but firm. "Julia, please, get out!" she screamed, throwing a vase at him. The object smashed against the wall, sending water and flowers scattering across the floor. Leonard flinched back, stunned by the outburst. He looked at me with pure hatred, then back at her. "You're going to regret this," he threatened. "You both are." Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. When we were alone, Julia collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I rushed to her, holding her as her body shook with tears. My girl, my baby, my heart. Seeing her suffer like this felt like my own soul was being torn to pieces. "I loved him so much, Mum," she cried. "How could he? How did I not see it?" "He was good at lying, honey," I whispered, cradling her like I did when she was little. "And you are good at seeing the best in people." For nearly half an hour, we stayed like that, on the floor of that hotel room, with a $1,500 wedding dress pooled around us. The bouquet flowers were crushed, the makeup was ruined, and dreams were shattered. When the crying finally subsided, Julia lifted her swollen face. "What are we going to do now? There are 200 people downstairs waiting for a wedding." "We're going to cancel it," I answered pragmatically. "It happens. People will talk for a few weeks, then they'll forget." But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Leonard didn't seem like the type of man to accept defeat easily. His pride was wounded, and men like him are dangerous when they're humiliated. "I'll ask Carla to inform the guests. We'll make something up. Sudden illness, whatever." Julia nodded, drying her tears. "Let's get out of here. I don't want to see anyone." I helped her change and pack her things. We only told Anthony what had happened. He would handle the situation with the vendors and guests. I paid an extra fee to the hotel to ensure their discretion. Money always helps buy silence. When we left through the back, avoiding the lobby where the first guests were already arriving, Julia was unrecognizable. Not just because of the lack of makeup and the dress, but because of the hardness I now saw in her eyes. Something had fundamentally changed in her that afternoon. In the car, as I drove home, she broke the silence. "Thank you, Mum, for saving me from him." I squeezed her hand. "That's what I'm here for, honey. Always." What we didn't know was that Leonard would not accept humiliation easily. In the days that followed, we would discover just how far he was willing to go for revenge. The morning after the cancelled wedding, I woke up to the insistent ringing of the phone. It was Anthony, his voice tense on the other end of the line. "Regina, have you seen the internet today?" "No, I just woke up." "Why?" "Leonard is posting things, terrible things, about you and Julia. It's everywhere." I leaped out of bed, rushing to find my tablet. With trembling hands, I went on social media. What I saw made my blood run cold. Leonard had published a long post claiming to be the victim of a cruel setup by a psychotic mother-in-law who couldn't stand to lose control over her daughter. He alleged that I had manipulated Julia her whole life, isolating her from relationships to maintain control over her and the bakery. Worse, he had edited the recording I made, cutting parts and rearranging them to make it seem like he was just responding to his friend's provocations. The narrative he constructed painted me as a bitter, controlling, and calculating woman. And it worked. The comments were devastating. People were taking his side, calling me a monster, saying Julia had escaped a marriage that would have trapped her even further under my toxic influence. "Mum, what's going on?" Julia appeared at my bedroom door, her eyes swollen from crying all night. "My phone won't stop ringing." I looked at my daughter, her face still marked by the pain of the recent betrayal, and I hesitated. She was already suffering so much, but hiding the truth would only make things worse. Leonard is spreading lies about us, honey. He edited the recording. He's twisted everything. Julia took the tablet from my hands and started to read, her face growing paler with every line. When she got to the comments, silent tears began to fall. "He's destroying our reputation," I murmured, feeling helpless. The bakery. Our customers, suppliers, friends, they were all seeing this. Leonard was flipping the narrative, playing the victim and painting us as the villains. That same day, we took 3 more hits. A group of protesters appeared in front of the bakery, with signs calling us abusers and manipulators. 2 large companies that bought our products called to cancel their contracts. And worst of all, close friends started avoiding us, some even sending accusatory messages. "How can people believe him so easily?" Julia asked, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold. "They've known us for years." "People love a scandal, honey. And Leonard knows exactly how to manipulate public opinion." Over the next 10 days, the situation only got worse. Leonard gave interviews to local blogs and appeared on a popular podcast, crying as he talked about how he had been deceived by a family he truly loved. Every appearance was carefully planned to seem sincere and emotional. Meanwhile, we tried to keep the bakery running, but our customer base dropped drastically. Employees started quitting, afraid of being associated with the scandal. Even the bank called us in for a meeting, concerned about the impact on our ability to repay the loan we had for our recent expansion. Julia was devastated. The spark had gone from her eyes. She barely ate. She barely slept. One night, I went into her room and found her sitting in the dark, looking at old photos of her and Leonard. "I was so stupid," she mumbled as I sat down beside her. "All the signs were there. The way he always asked about the bakery, how he got more interested in me after we started to expand." "You weren't stupid, honey. You were deceived by someone who has made a career out of it. People think I'm weak, that you control me." She looked at me, her eyes red. "That's what hurts the most. As if all the work we did together, as partners, was some kind of abuse on your part." I hugged her, feeling my heart break all over again. Julia had always been my pride. From a young age, she showed an interest in baking, learning every recipe, every technique. When I finished paying off the mortgage and was able to reinvest, it was she who suggested we expand into the corporate events market. We worked together as equals, despite the difference in our age and experience. And now, Leonard Shun was rewriting our history. On the 12th day after the cancelled wedding, when we thought things couldn't get any worse, Anthony showed up at our house with alarming news. "Leonard has filed a lawsuit against you," he said, placing the papers on the kitchen table. "He's claiming emotional distress, defamation, and breach of contract." "Breach of contract?" I asked in disbelief. "What contract?" "He says there was a verbal agreement to make him a partner in the bakery after the wedding, and that you, Regina, deliberately sabotaged everything out of jealousy and control." "That's absurd," I exclaimed. "Absurd, but dangerous," Anthony warned. "He's hired Marshall Thompson." My stomach dropped. Marshall Thompson was one of the most aggressive lawyers in the city, known for turning simple cases into bloody media battles. He didn't just represent clients in court, he created public spectacles that destroyed reputations. "And there's more," Anthony continued, hesitating. "Carla, the wedding planner, is siding with him. She's saying she heard you, Regina, planning to sabotage the wedding weeks beforehand." "What?" Julia shot up, outraged. "That's a lie. Mum worked day and night to organize everything perfectly." "I know," Anthony sighed. "But Leonard probably bought her off or threatened her. He has resources, and he's willing to use them." That night, after Anthony left, Julia and I sat in silence on the porch, watching the stars. The bakery we built together was at risk. Our reputation was in tatters, and a threatening lawsuit loomed over our heads. "What are we going to do, Mum?" Julia finally asked, her voice small in the darkness. I looked at my daughter and felt a new determination grow inside me. Leonard wanted a war. He would get a war. "We're going to fight," I answered, my voice firm. "I didn't build a business from scratch, raise you on my own, and overcome everything we've faced just to give up now." The next day, I called Eleanor Vance, a formidable lawyer I had met years ago at a women's entrepreneurship event. She wasn't cheap, but she had an ironclad reputation and an impressive win rate. Eleanor listened to our story, examined the evidence, the original recording, the signed documents, Leonard's posts, and nodded gravely. "He's playing dirty, but he's made mistakes," she said, her eyes glinting with determination. "First, the editing on the recording is detectable by any expert. Second, his accusations are defamatory. Third, he has no proof of this supposed verbal agreement about the partnership." "But what about the wedding planner?" I asked. "She's lying to support him." "We'll take care of her," Eleanor guaranteed. "People who can be bought often have compromising histories. Leave that to me." Eleanor mounted a two-pronged strategy, legal and public. We filed a countersuit for defamation and emotional distress. Simultaneously, she hired a crisis management firm to help us win back public opinion. The next few days were a whirlwind. Eleanor got a court order forcing Leonard to take down the defamatory posts. He complied, but the damage was already done. The communications team advised us not to respond directly to the accusations on social media, but to keep the focus on our work. "You have a strong story," explained Marcia, the communications specialist. "A single mother building a business with her daughter, overcoming adversity. We're going to focus on that, not on his allegations." We followed the plan, posting stories about the bakery's journey, sharing old photos of Julia and me working together since she was a little girl. Little by little, some loyal customers began to speak out in our favor. But Leonard wasn't going to give up easily. 2 weeks after our countersuit, he launched another attack. He had supposedly found ex-employees willing to testify that I created a toxic work environment and that Julia was a puppet in my hands. "Who are these ex-employees?" I asked Eleanor, furious. "I've always treated everyone with respect." "Marcus Silva and Patricia Gomez," she replied, consulting her notes. A chill ran down my spine. Marcus was fired for harassment. Patricia tried to embezzle money from the cash register. "Exactly," Eleanor smiled. "Leonard didn't do his homework. We have documentation on both cases, including security camera footage of Patricia taking money. He just handed us some valuable ammunition." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Leonard was getting desperate, making mistakes. While the legal battle unfolded, Julia and I fought to keep the bakery afloat. We lost almost 40% of our customers, had to lay off 5 employees, and drastically cut expenses. Every day was a struggle. Every bill paid was a small victory. One afternoon, while Julia and I were working in the bakery's kitchen, now with only 3 employees where we once had 15, the door opened. It was Gus, one of our oldest suppliers, whom we hadn't seen since the scandal broke. "Regina, Julia," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on my apron, exchanging a worried look with Julia. "Of course, Gus. Is something wrong?" "Actually, yes." He placed a folder on the counter. "I received an offer from Sweet Dreams to be their exclusive supplier. They offered double what I charge for your orders." Sweet Dreams was our biggest local competitor. The owner, Charles Miller, had always been a respectful competitor. Until now. "But you came to tell us before accepting," I concluded, seeing in his eyes that he was torn. You were my first customers, he explained. When I started growing organic fruit, nobody wanted to pay a fair price. You did. That saved my ranch. Julia walked over, touching his arm. Gus, we understand. You have a family to support. If you need to take their offer— It's not just that, he interrupted. Charles approached me yesterday. When I asked him about the sudden interest in my produce, he confessed that Leonard had approached him. He suggested a partnership to— How did he put it? Finish you off once and for all. My blood ran cold. Leonard is orchestrating a boycott of our suppliers. Gus nodded. And customers, too. He's offering kickbacks to anyone who switches. Charles didn't want to participate at first, but the pressure is mounting. Why are you telling us this? I asked, suspicious. Because it's not right, he answered simply. I don't know what happened between you and that young man, but I've known you two for 10 years. You're honest people, and he's playing dirty. After Gus left, having turned down the offer from Sweet Dreams, despite our urging him to accept it, Julia and I sat in a daze. He wants to completely destroy us, I murmured. All because of his wounded pride, Julia finished, her voice bitter. And to think I almost married him. We need to tell Eleanor about this, I decided. This is economic harassment. There must be something we can do legally. Eleanor listened attentively to our story, taking notes. This is serious, she agreed. But we need concrete proof. The word of one supplier might not be enough. What if we could get more suppliers to testify? I suggested. Gus can't be the only one Leonard approached. That would help, Eleanor nodded. But it would be even better if we had something in writing, or recorded, irrefutable proof of the attempted economic sabotage. It was Julia who came up with the idea. Her eyes, once dull with sadness, now shone with determination. What if we pretend that one of our suppliers accepted the proposal? We could record the conversation when Leonard gives specific instructions. Eleanor considered it for a moment. Then she smiled. That could work, but we need to be extremely careful. It has to seem natural without any entrapment, and we need to ensure it's legal in our state. The plan began to take shape. Gus agreed to participate, pretending to accept Leonard's proposal. Eleanor prepared everything to ensure the recording would be legal and admissible in court. In the meantime, we continued to face the financial consequences of the smear campaign. We had to mortgage the house to keep the bakery running. I spent sleepless nights poring over spreadsheets, trying to find ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality. One night, I found Julia crying in the empty bakery kitchen, staring at the nearly bare shelves. He's succeeding, isn't he? She sobbed as I sat beside her. He's going to destroy us. No, honey, I replied, holding her hands. He can hurt us. He can make us bleed. But he will not destroy us. How can you be so sure? I looked down at her hands in mine, hands that had learned to knead, mix, and create from such a young age, hands that held the same strength as my own. Because people like Leonard only know how to destroy, I explained. But we, Julia, we know how to build, and rebuilding always takes more strength and courage than tearing down. She hugged me tightly, and we stayed that way for a long time. The next morning, we would begin to execute our plan. The trap was ready to be sprung. Gus was the perfect bait. As an organic fruit supplier to several businesses in the city, his switch to Sweet Dreams would be a significant blow to our operation. Leonard would take the bait. Eleanor carefully coached Gus on what he could and could not say to avoid entrapment. He would use a court-approved recording device hidden in his shirt pocket. The meeting would take place in a public cafe, where witnesses could confirm they met. Remember, Eleanor instructed Gus on the morning of the meeting. "You just have to let him talk. Don't lead him. Don't suggest anything. Just listen and confirm." The plan was simple. Gus would tell Leonard he was considering the exclusivity offer from Sweet Dreams, but wanted to better understand the terms. Specifically, he wanted to know why Charles had mentioned Leonard as being part of the deal. Julia and I spent the day at the bakery, feigning normalcy while our stomachs churned with anxiety. Eleanor stayed with us, her phone always in hand, waiting for news. At 3:37 in the afternoon, Gus called. "It's done," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "I got everything on tape. He didn't just admit to orchestrating a boycott, he said some other things. Well, you'll hear." An hour later, Gus, Eleanor, Julia, and I gathered in the lawyer's office to listen to the recording. The quality was excellent, every word clearly audible. "So, Mr. Medeiros, Charles mentioned you're behind this offer from Sweet Dreams," Gus began on the recording. "Charles talks too much," Leonard replied, his arrogant voice easily recognizable. "But yes, I'm financing part of his expansion in exchange for some strategic cooperation." "Like poaching suppliers from Julia's Delights?" A cold laugh echoed on the recording. "Exactly, that bakery needs to disappear. And with it, the arrogance of those two. May I ask why you're so interested in destroying them?" "It's personal. Regina Almeida humiliated me. She manipulated my fiancé against me. Nobody does that to me and gets away with it. Nobody." "I see. And what happens after the bakery closes? Will suppliers like me still have exclusive contracts with Sweet Dreams?" A pause. Then, "Probably not. Charles doesn't have the capital to keep all of you on long term. This is just a means to an end." "Which would be?" "Destroying Regina Almeida, of course. Making that pig pay for getting in my way. And the daughter. That idiot believed every lie I told her. 'You're beautiful, Julia. You're special, Julia,' he mimicked in a sing-song voice. Then he laughed cruelly. So desperate for attention she'd believe any crumb I threw her way. But the most pathetic part," Leonard continued, "is how she pretended not to see I was only interested in the money. Who would be interested in a fat crybaby like her if it wasn't for the money?" Julia made an audible sound of disgust upon hearing those words. I squeezed her hand tightly. After that, the conversation continued for a few more minutes, with Leonard detailing how he planned to use other suppliers and customers to isolate us completely. When the recording ended, the silence in the office was heavy. Julia had tears in her eyes, but not of sadness, of pure rage. "Do we have enough?" I asked Eleanor. She nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. "More than enough. This not only proves malicious economic interference, but it also completely debunks the narrative he's been building in the media and in court." "What do we do now?" "First, we add this to our lawsuit against him. Second, we use it strategically with the public. We won't leak the entire recording. That would be cruel to Julia. But we'll use selected parts that show his true intentions." "And Charles Miller?" Gus asked. "He's involved but seemed uneasy with the whole situation." Eleanor considered it. "I'll speak with him separately. It might be useful to have him on our side as a witness against Leonard." The next morning, Eleanor called a press conference. She carefully selected clips from the recording that would expose Leonard's true intentions without revealing the cruelest insults against Julia. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The same media outlets that had attacked us now rushed to publish the truth. Former customers started reaching out, expressing their support. Social media, once a battlefield where we were under assault, was now filled with messages of solidarity. Charles Miller, the owner of Sweet Dreams, issued an official statement distancing himself from Leonard and apologizing for his involvement. "I was manipulated and pressured," he wrote. "Competition in the market should be fair and based on quality, not sabotage." But the final blow came 3 days later, when a widely read blog published an explosive report. Two of Leonard's ex-girlfriends came forward to tell stories similar to ours. Both recounted how he had manipulated them for financial gain, how he had insulted them in private while maintaining a facade of Prince Charming in public. Leonard tried to defend himself, claiming the recording was doctored and that he was being persecuted. But it was too late. The tide had completely turned. 2 weeks after the press conference, we received a settlement offer. Leonard would drop all allegations against us if we dropped ours against him. "He's desperate," Eleanor observed. "His image is destroyed. Clients are leaving his consulting firm. Nobody wants to be associated with him." "Should we accept?" I asked, looking at Julia, leaving the decision in her hands. My daughter, who had grown so much during this ordeal, shook her head firmly. "No," she said, her voice quiet but determined. "He tried to destroy us, not just financially but emotionally. He wanted me to believe I was unworthy of true love. I want him to face the full legal consequences." Eleanor smiled, proud. "I completely agree. And with the evidence we have, I can guarantee he will face significant consequences." The case went on. 3 months later, the judge delivered his verdict. Leonard was found guilty of defamation, malicious interference with business relations, and harassment. He was ordered to pay a substantial settlement and issue a public retraction. The bakery began to recover slowly. Customers returned, and new contracts were signed. The road ahead would be long, but we were back. One afternoon, as Julia and I were working in the kitchen testing a new recipe, she broke the comfortable silence. "Mum, do you ever wonder, if I had married him, how long it would have taken me to realize the truth?" I looked at my daughter, her face concentrated as she measured ingredients with precision. "I don't know, honey. Maybe days, maybe years. The important thing is that we know now. Sometimes I think I should thank you for overhearing that conversation on the wedding day," she continued, not looking at me. "But other times I feel like I should have trusted you immediately without needing proof." I gently touched her face, turning it toward me. "Julia, you loved him. Love makes us blind sometimes. Don't blame yourself for having doubted." She smiled, a sad smile. "I guess I learned the hard way that not everyone deserves our heart." "It's a tough lesson," I agreed. "But you survived. We survived. And we came out stronger." That evening, after closing the bakery, I stayed for a few minutes alone in the kitchen. I looked around. At the ovens where thousands of desserts had been created. At the countertops where Julia learned to mix dough. At the small office where we planned the business expansion. Leonard had tried to take all of this from us. Not just the business, but our dignity, our reputation, our mother-daughter relationship. He almost succeeded. But in the end, what saved us wasn't just the recording or the legal strategy. It was the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. A connection that no man, no matter how manipulative, could ever completely sever. A year after the almost wedding, as Julia and I came to call it, our bakery had not only survived, but it was thriving. The publicity, ironically, ended up putting us in the spotlight. Our story of resilience against a vengeful conman resonated with many people, especially women. We received invitations to speak at women's entrepreneurship events. Julia, initially reluctant to speak publicly about her experience, gradually found her voice. She began to use her story to warn other women about manipulative relationships. "The greatest danger," she would say in her talks, "is not the declared enemy, but the one who presents himself as your biggest fan while plotting your downfall. One night after one of these events, a young woman approached Julia in tears. "Your story saved me," she confessed. "I was about to hand over total control of my family's business to my fiancé. After hearing you, I started noticing little signs I had been ignoring." Moments like that healed something deep within Julia. Her personal pain was transforming into purpose. What was once shame was now strength. As for me, I learned my own lessons. The main one being to never underestimate what a mother is capable of to protect her child. The day I heard Leonard call my daughter a filthy pig, something primal woke up in me, a strength I didn't even know I possessed. I also learned about forgiveness, not for Leonard, who never showed any real remorse, but for myself. For months, I tortured myself, wondering if I could have prevented it all. If there were signs I missed, questions I didn't ask. Eleanor, who had become a close friend, helped me understand that Leonard was an experienced predator. People like him are masters at hiding their true intentions. The bakery expanded to a second location. We hired more employees, including 3 women who had lost their jobs during the pandemic. We created a small training program for single mothers, teaching them the basics of baking so they could work from home. One quiet afternoon, as the first batch of pastries came out of the oven and the scent of cinnamon filled the shop, Julia called me into the office. "Mum, I have something to show you." She opened her laptop and showed me an email. It was from a publishing house, inviting us to write a book about our story and the journey of the bakery. "What do you think?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. "I think we have a story worth telling," I replied, smiling. We started working on the book that same week. Writing it was a cathartic process. Reliving the painful moments wasn't easy, but there was something liberating about telling our own story, in our own words, without distortion or manipulation. The book was published 8 months later. Betrayal, Revenge, How I Saved My Daughter and Our Business from a Con Man, became a modest success, particularly among female entrepreneurs and single mothers. Leonard, we heard through the grapevine, had left town after the trial. His consulting firm went bankrupt. His reputation was irreparably stained. He tried to start over in another city, but the internet has a long memory. The last we heard, he was working as a salesman at a used car dealership. One night, after a book launch event, Julia and I returned home exhausted but fulfilled. We sat on the porch with mugs of tea, watching the stars. "You know what's strange, Mum?" she reflected. "If I had married Leonard, today I would be considered a successful woman by conventional standards. I'd have a handsome, seemingly successful husband. I'd probably live in a big house." "And you would be unhappy," I finished gently. "Deeply. You would be used, privately humiliated, possibly cheated on." She took a sip of tea. "I've thought a lot about the patterns of success, how we're taught from a young age that marriage is the ultimate goal, especially for women." I nodded, understanding completely. I myself had absorbed those values in my youth, feeling like a failure for raising a daughter alone after her father abandoned us. "You know what else I learned from all this?" Julia continued. "That true relationships are partnerships, not transactions. Leonard saw me as a means to an end. You have always seen me as a whole person, worthy of love and respect." Tears welled in my eyes. "You have always been my greatest pride, Julia, from the very first moment. That's why I've decided something." She sat up straight, taking on that posture I recognized from when she made important decisions. "I'm going to get my master's degree in business management. I want to expand the bakery even more, maybe even to other states. And yes, someday I'll get married, have kids, but it will be because I want to, not because I need validation, or because I think it's what I'm supposed to do. I squeezed her hand, my heart overflowing with pride. You will be incredible at everything you choose to do. 2 years after that conversation on the porch, Julia's delights had grown into a chain with 4 locations. Julia was in her last semester of her master's program, implementing new management strategies that had increased our efficiency by 30%. As for me, I began to step back from the day-to-day operations, trusting Julia and the talented team we had built. Not for lack of interest, but because I knew it was time to let my daughter fully step into her role as a leader. We still lived together, but Julia had bought her own apartment that she was slowly remodeling. It's important for us to have our own spaces, she explained, but we'll always be partners, Mum. On one particularly hectic morning, when the main bakery was bustling with customers and the aroma of fresh bread filled the air, I saw a familiar face walk in. It took me a few seconds to recognize Carla, the wedding planner who had testified falsely for Leonard. She looked nervous, glancing around as if she feared being thrown out. Julia was at the register, serving customers with her characteristic smile. When she saw Carla, her smile faltered for just a moment. I walked over, curious and a little apprehensive. "Regina," Carla greeted, her voice low. "Julia, I came to apologize." We exchanged surprised glances. "Leonard threatened me," she continued. "He said he would ruin my business if I didn't confirm his story. I had just invested all my savings into my events company, and I was scared." She swallowed hard. "It's no excuse, I know, but I wanted you to know that I am deeply sorry." Julia looked at me, then back at Carla. For a moment, I thought she was going to ask her to leave. Instead, she offered her one of the fresh sweet rolls that had just come out of the oven. "Thank you for coming," my daughter said simply. "That takes courage." Carla accepted the pastry, tears in her eyes. "You've built something incredible here, something honest. I'm so sorry I helped nearly destroy it." After she left, Julia turned to me with a sad smile. "Forgiveness is a choice too, isn't it?" "One of the hardest," I agreed. That small moment of reconciliation seemed to symbolize everything we had been through and learned. Leonard tried to destroy us by using our insecurities against us. He tried to turn Julia's kindness into weakness and my motherly protection into toxic control. But he failed because he underestimated what is built with true love, whether it's a business, a mother-daughter relationship, or a person's character. Those things can be attacked, they can even be damaged, but they have a resilience that no lie can completely destroy. That night, as we were closing the bakery, I watched my daughter organizing the final details, checking the orders for the next day, smiling at the employees as they left. I couldn't help but think back to the day I heard those cruel words from Leonard, of the pain I felt, the rage that consumed me, the fear of losing my daughter to a man who only wanted to use her. In that moment of desperation, I had made a choice. To fight for the truth, even knowing it might cost me my daughter's love, was the hardest decision of my life. Now, seeing Julia strong, confident, and truly happy, I knew I had made the right choice. "What are you thinking about, Mum?" Julia asked, noticing my contemplative gaze. "About how sometimes the worst moments can lead us to the best places," I answered, smiling. "And about how proud I am of the woman you've become." She hugged me, and in that embrace was our entire history, the love, the pain, the struggle, and finally, the victory, not just against Leonard, but against everything he represented. The lies, the manipulation, the belief that love is a weakness to be exploited. We learned the hard way that true love isn't blind. It sees clearly and chooses to love anyway. and that the truth, no matter how painful at the moment, is always the surest way home.